The arena was built to humiliate. That was its purpose, its design, its legacy. Floating above the molten plains of Karos Prime, the grand arena of Virex hung like a crown of fire and steel, its underbelly glowing with reflected lava. Thousands of alien species filled its colossal tiers, scaled, furred, armored, translucent, each one roaring, screeching, or vibrating in anticipation. They had come for blood. They had come for spectacle. And most importantly, they had come to watch a human fail. Kale stood alone at the center platform, the metal beneath his boots warm from the geothermal heat rising below. He could feel the eyes on him, millions of them. Some curious, most amused, a few hungry. Species designation, human. The announcer boomed, its voice layered with harmonic distortion, translated across frequencies. Origin, Soul 3. Classification, fragile, low strength, short-lived. Laughter rippled across the arena like a storm. Kale didn't react. He adjusted the strap of his worn combat glove and exhaled slowly. He'd expected this. Earth's reputation in the interstellar circuits wasn't impressive. Humans were new, unproven, easy prey. Opponent, the announcer continued, voice rising with theatrical reverence. Champion of the Virex Dominion, undefeated in 312 consecutive matches. The lights dimmed. A low, vibrating hum filled the arena. Zyra of the Iron Bloom. The gates opposite Kale exploded open. She stepped through like a queen entering her throne room. Zyra was beautiful, in the way a storm is beautiful. Tall, her form sculpted in iridescent armor that seemed to grow from her skin, each plate shifting like petals of metal. Her limbs were long, elegant, but undeniably powerful. Her eyes, 4 of them, glowed with a soft violet light. And she was smiling. Not kindly. Amused. "Is that it?" she said, her voice transmitted directly into Kale's mind. "This is the challenger?" Her gaze swept over him, his simple armor, his human proportions, his lack of visible enhancements. She laughed. The sound was musical. Cruel. The crowd erupted with her. Kale tilted his head slightly. "You done?" Her laughter stopped, but the smile didn't. "Oh," she said, stepping closer, her movements fluid and deliberate. "You speak. That's new. Most of your kind tremble by now." "Maybe they didn't get this far," Kale replied. That earned a few murmurs from the crowd. Zyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. The rules were simple. No weapons. No external tech. Victory by submission or incapacity. Death, while discouraged, was accepted." A barrier shimmered into existence around the arena floor, sealing them inside. "Begin," the announcer declared. Zyra moved first. She vanished. Not literally, but to Kale's human perception, it might as well have been. One moment she stood 10 meters away. The next, she was already striking. Her arm elongated, armor unfolding into a blade-like appendage, slicing toward his throat. Kale barely reacted in time. He dropped low, the blade cutting through the air where his neck had been. The wind of it alone stung. Fast. Too fast. He rolled, narrowly avoiding a second strike that slammed into the floor, leaving a glowing scar in the metal. The crowd cheered. Zyra straightened, tilting her head. "Impressive," she said lightly. "You lasted 2 seconds longer than the last one." Kale stood, steadying his breathing. "Guess I'm special." She smirked and lunged again. This time, she didn't hold back. Her limbs blurred, shifting between blade, whip, and hammer in rapid succession. Each strike came from a different angle, unpredictable, relentless. Kale didn't try to match her speed. He couldn't. Instead, he watched. Every movement, every shift in her stance, every fraction of hesitation between transitions. He let his instincts take over, ducking, weaving, stepping just out of range. Not fast enough to avoid everything. A shallow cut opened across his shoulder. Another grazed his ribs. Pain flared. He ignored it. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Look at him dance. He's just delaying. Finish him, Zyra. Zyra, however, wasn't laughing anymore. Her attacks became sharper, more precise. Stop moving, she snapped, irritation creeping into her tone. Kale smiled faintly. Make me. She did. Or tried to. Her next strike wasn't aimed to cut. It was aimed to trap. Her arm split into multiple tendrils mid-swing, spreading like a net. Kale dodged left, but one of the tendrils curved unnaturally, catching his ankle. It tightened instantly. Before he could react, she yanked. He hit the ground hard. The air left his lungs in a rush. Zyra was on him in an instant, one armored limb pressing against his chest, pinning him. Her face hovered inches from his. You're done, she said softly. The arena roared in agreement. Kale looked up at her. Calm. Too calm. That all you got? He asked. For a split second, Zyra hesitated. And that was enough. Kale moved. Not fast. Not flashy. Precise. His free hand shot up, not to strike, but to grab the joint where her armor shifted between forms. The weakest point. He twisted. Not with brute strength, but with timing. Zyra's limb faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. But in that fraction, Kale rolled, using her own momentum against her, flipping her over his shoulder. She hit the ground. Hard. The arena fell quiet. Zyra recovered instantly, springing back to her feet. But something had changed. The smile was gone. The crowd's laughter faded. What was that? Someone whispered. Kale stood slowly, brushing dust from his sleeve. Basic leverage, he said. You should try it. Zyra's eyes burned brighter. You got lucky. Maybe. She attacked again. But this time, Kale didn't just dodge. He engaged. Her speed was still overwhelming. Her strength, undeniable. But Kale had seen enough. He wasn't fighting her power. He was fighting her patterns. Every transformation of her limbs followed a sequence. Every strike a setup for the next. Elegant. Efficient. Predictable. He stepped inside her range. A dangerous move. The crowd gasped. Zyra's blade form shot toward his torso. And missed. Kale was already moving. Not away. Closer. He slipped past the strike, his hand striking, not hard, but precisely, against another shifting joint. Her form stuttered. He pivoted, using his body as a fulcrum, redirecting her momentum. She stumbled. Again. Now the arena was silent. Zyra snarled, her composure cracking. You think this is a game? No, Kale said. I think you've never had to fight someone who doesn't play by your rules. She roared and unleashed everything. Her form expanded, armor blooming outward into a storm of blades and tendrils, covering the entire arena floor. There was no room to dodge. No space to escape. The crowd leaned forward. This was the end. Kale closed his eyes. For just a moment, he felt the heat beneath his feet, the vibration of the arena, the rhythm of her movement. And then, he stepped forward. Not away. Through. The blades came. He moved between them, not by speed, but by anticipation. Every strike was already known before it happened. A centimeter to the left. A half step forward. A twist of the shoulder. He flowed through the storm like water, through cracks in stone. The impossible, made real. Zyra faltered. Just for a second. How? Kale reached her. He didn't strike. He placed his hand against the center of her chest, where all her shifting armor converged. Her core. The source of her transformations. He leaned in slightly. You rely too much on being unstoppable, he said quietly. And then, he pushed. Not with strength. With understanding. Zyra's form collapsed. Her armor locked mid-transition, freezing her in place. The glowing light in her eyes flickered. She staggered back. Tried to move. Couldn't. The arena held its breath. Zyra dropped to one knee. Silence. Complete. Absolute. Kale stepped back. Gave her space. Didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. He just watched. The announcer's voice trembled. Champion. Zyra incapacitated. A pause. Long. Heavy. Victory. Human challenger. No one cheered. No one spoke. Because no one understood what they had just witnessed. Zyra looked up at him. For the first time, not with amusement, not with arrogance, but with something else. Respect. What are you? She asked. Kale shrugged. Just human. The barrier dropped. The arena lights dimmed. And somewhere, deep within the countless minds watching, a realization took root. Humans weren't the weakest species. They weren't the fastest or the strongest, but they learned. And in a universe built on power, that was far more dangerous. As Kale turned to leave the arena, the silence followed him. Not empty, not mocking, but heavy, reverent. The silence did not break when Kale reached the edge of the arena. It deepened, because silence, in a place like this, meant something far more powerful than noise ever could. It meant fear. Zyra remained on one knee, her armor still locked in partial bloom. The once fluid plates that had moved like petals in a storm were now rigid, frozen mid-transition, an unnatural stillness for a being built on motion. Her breathing was steady, but her mind was not. She could feel it, the disruption, the imbalance. Kale hadn't overpowered her. He had understood her. And that was something no opponent had ever done before. High above, in the private observation tiers, the rulers of the Virex Dominion watched in stillness. They had expected entertainment. They had expected confirmation of superiority. Instead, they had witnessed something unsettling. A variable, a flaw in the hierarchy they had believed unshakable. Identify the technique, one of them demanded. But no one answered, because there was no known technique, no recorded combat form, no enhancement signature, no technology, just a human. Back in the arena, Kale stopped walking, not because he had to, but because something behind him shifted. Zyra stood, slowly, painfully. Her armor resisted, but not entirely. Small movements returned to her limbs, each one accompanied by a faint, grinding sound. She wasn't fully incapacitated anymore. Not yet restored, but not defeated in spirit. You're leaving, she called out. Her voice was no longer mocking. It was sharp, focused, almost demanding. Kale glanced over his shoulder. The match is over. For them, she said, gesturing slightly toward the silent crowd. Not for me. That made him pause. He turned fully now, studied her. There was no arrogance left in her stance. No theatrical dominance. Only something raw. Something honest. You want to keep going? Kale asked. Zyra straightened as much as her locked armor allowed. I need to understand. The arena remained sealed. The officials hadn't intervened, because they didn't know how to intervene in something they couldn't categorize. Kale sighed softly. This isn't pride talking, is it? No, Zyra said. It's something worse. He smiled faintly. Curiosity. She didn't respond, but her silence confirmed it. Kale stepped back toward the center. The crowd shifted slightly, uneasy, uncertain. What was happening now wasn't part of the show they had paid for. There was no script for this. All right, Kale said. One more exchange. Zyra nodded. Her armor flickered, slowly unlocking in segments. Not fully restored, but enough. Enough to move. Enough to fight. This time, there was no announcement. No signal. They both moved when they were ready. Zyra attacked first again. But it was different. Slower. Measured. She wasn't trying to overwhelm him. She was trying to learn him. Kale noticed immediately. Good, he murmured. Her strike came. Direct, clean, without unnecessary transformation. Kale deflected, not with force, but with angle. Their arms connected. For the first time, it wasn't predator and prey. It was balance. She adjusted. He adjusted. Each movement answered by another. A conversation spoken through motion. You don't rely on strength, Zyra said as they circled. Neither should you, Kale replied. She lunged. He stepped aside. But this time, she anticipated. Her limbs shifted mid-motion, not into a blade, but into a locking arc, cutting off his escape. Kale's eyes flickered. Then, he smiled. Better. He dropped his center of gravity, redirecting her motion again, but this time, she resisted. Not completely, but enough. Enough to disrupt his flow. They broke apart. The crowd leaned forward again. Not cheering. Not mocking. Watching. Learning. Zyra exhaled slowly. I see it now, she said. See what? Kale asked. You don't fight the opponent, she said. You fight the decision they make before they move. Kale nodded. Exactly. A long pause followed. Then, Zyra did something unexpected. She stepped back and lowered her guard. I yield, she said. The words echoed across the arena. Not as defeat, but as recognition. Kale didn't respond immediately. He studied her again. Made sure. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't deception. It wasn't. Then it's done, he said. This time, the silence broke. But not with laughter. Not with chaos. With something far rarer. Respect. It began slowly. A single sound somewhere in the upper tiers. Then another. And another. Different species. Different voices. All forming something unfamiliar to the arena. Applause. Zyra turned her head slightly, hearing it. Her expression didn't change much. But something in her posture softened. Kale looked up at the crowd. Then back at her. Looks like you're not the only one learning today. She let out a quiet breath. No, she said. We all are. The barrier finally dropped. Officials rushed in, but cautiously, as if approaching something fragile rather than something dangerous. Because what had happened here wasn't destruction. It was transformation. As Kale walked toward the exit once more, the applause followed him. Not loud, not overwhelming, but steady, persistent. Zyra watched him go. Then, after a moment, she followed. Not as a challenger, but as something else. At the threshold of the arena, Kale stopped again. Without turning, he said, You're not coming to fight me again, are you? Zyra's voice came from just behind him. No. A pause. Next time, I'd rather train. Kale chuckled softly. Careful. That's how humans spread. For the first time, Zyra said, That doesn't sound like a threat. He glanced back at her. Give it time. And with that, they stepped out of the arena together. Behind them, the grand arena of Virex remained standing. But something within it had changed. Because legends weren't always born from victory. Sometimes, they were born from silence. And across the galaxy, the story spread. Not of a human who defeated a champion, but of a moment when power met understanding and lost.